I couldn't reach my daughter for 5 days. When I went to her house, I heard scratching under the bed. Chapter 1. The first day, I didn't think much of it. That's the thing about being a mother. You spend your whole life waiting for the phone to ring. You wait for it when they're teenagers, out past curfew. You wait for it when they're in college, far from home. You wait for it when they get married and start their own lives. But after a while, you learn to stop holding your breath. You learn that silence doesn't always mean danger. Sometimes it just means they're busy. Sometimes it means they forgot. Sometimes it means they're just living their lives. That's what I told myself on that Tuesday morning. Claire is 32. She's a grown woman. She has a husband and a job and a house with a white picket fence in Santa Fe. She doesn't need her mother calling her every 5 minutes. I know that. I've always known that. I try to give her space. I try not to be the kind of mother who hovers. Frank tells me I worry too much. He says I inherited it from my own mother and that I'm passing it down to Claire. Maybe he's right. Maybe I am. But on that Tuesday, I picked up the phone anyway. It was just a check-in. I wanted to hear her voice. I wanted to ask her about her week. I wanted to tell her about the new recipe I tried, the one that turned out terrible and burned the bottom of my favorite pot. Little things. Mother-daughter things. The phone rang. And rang. And rang. I pulled the receiver away from my ear and stared at it. That was strange. Claire always answers. She's a physical therapist. She can't always pick up when she's with a patient, but she usually calls back within an hour. She's good about that. She knows I worried. I called her office. The receptionist put me through to her voicemail. I left a message. Hey, sweetie. Just checking in. Call me back when you get a chance. Love you. I hung up. I told myself she was busy. There were a million reasons she wouldn't answer. She was in a session. She was in a meeting. She was driving. She was taking a nap. It was fine. Everything was fine. That night, Frank came home from work. He's a retired high school principal. He still does some consulting work for the district. Keeps him busy. He walked in the door and kissed me on the cheek. His skin smelled like paper and coffee. How was your day? He asked. Fine, I said. I called Claire. She didn't answer. Frank shrugged. She's a busy woman, Beth. She'll call tomorrow. I nodded. I didn't argue. I didn't want to be the nagging wife. I put the thought out of my mind. We had dinner. We watched the news. We went to bed. I fell asleep thinking about Claire's voice. I just wanted to hear it. The second day, I called again. No answer. I called 3 times that day. Morning, noon, and evening. Each time, the phone rang and went to voicemail. I left messages. My voice got more strained each time. I tried to sound normal. I tried to sound casual. But I could hear the worry creeping into, Hi, sweetie. Just trying to reach you. Everything okay? Give me a call. I sent a text message. Just 2 words. Everything okay? I waited. I stared at the screen. The little bubbles didn't appear. She didn't type back. I told myself she was busy. She was probably swamped at work. She had a big caseload. She was probably exhausted when she got home. She probably just crashed on the couch and forgot to charge her phone. That's a thing people do. I do it. I forget to charge my phone all the time. But it wasn't just Claire. I tried calling Mark too. Mark is her husband. He sells insurance. He's a good man, or so I thought. A steady man. A reliable man. He's always been polite to me, if a little distant. He's not the warmest person in the world, but he makes Claire happy. Or he did. His phone rang. Straight to voicemail. No ring. No greeting. Just the automated voice telling me the subscriber was unavailable. That was strange. Mark always answers his phone. He's a salesman. He lives on that thing. He picks up for clients, for friends, for strangers. He picks up for telemarketers, for God's sake. He can't help it. It's a compulsion. But this time, he didn't pick up for me. I called his office. The woman at the front desk said he wasn't in. She said he'd been out of the office for a few days. She didn't know where he was. She didn't sound concerned. Just matter of fact. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. I tried to calm myself down. I went for a walk around the block. I tried to focus on the birds, on the sun, on the neighbor's dog barking in the yard. I tried to focus on anything except the feeling that something was wrong. It didn't work. The knot just got tighter. Frank came home and found me pacing in the kitchen. What's going on? He asked. Claire still isn't answering, I said. And Mark isn't answering. Neither of them. Frank rubbed his temples. He looked tired. Beth, they're probably on a trip. A romantic getaway. They probably wanted to surprise you and didn't want to tell you. You know how you get. You would have talked them out of it. I don't talk people out of things, I said. Frank raised an eyebrow. You talked me out of that trip to the Grand Canyon 3 years ago. You said it was too hot, and the hotel wouldn't have air conditioning. That was a valid concern. I said, see, Frank said. You're a worrier. And they know it. They probably just wanted a few days of peace and quiet. They'll call when they get back. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But the knot in my stomach didn't loosen. It just stayed there, cold and hard. I went to bed that night and stared at the ceiling. I didn't sleep. I just listened to Frank's steady breathing and felt the hours crawl by. The third day, I woke up at 3 in the morning. I couldn't go back to sleep. I picked up my phone. I called Claire again. It rang. Voicemail. I called Mark. Voicemail. I called the clinic where Claire works. The receptionist answered. I asked to speak to Claire. The receptionist hesitated. I heard her breathing on the other end of the line. I'm sorry, Mrs. Turner, she said. Claire hasn't been in this week. She called in sick on Monday. We haven't heard from her since. The knot in my stomach turned to ice. Sick, I said. She called in sick. Yes, ma'am. She said she had a terrible migraine. We haven't seen her since. I thanked the receptionist and hung up. My hands were shaking. Claire doesn't get migraines. She's never gotten migraines. She's healthy as a horse. She runs 3 miles every morning. She eats kale salads for lunch. She doesn't get sick. And if she did get sick, she'd tell me. She'd call me. She wouldn't just disappear. I called the neighbors. First, I called Gina, who lives across the street. Gina is a nice woman in her 50s. She volunteers at the local animal shelter. She's always in her garden, planting flowers and talking to her cats. She answered on the second ring. Beth, she said. Is everything okay? I don't know, I said. Have you seen Claire? Have you seen Mark? I haven't been able to reach them for 3 days. Gina was quiet for a moment. I saw lights on in the house last night, she said. Late. Around midnight. I thought it was strange. Claire usually goes to bed early, you know? She's always up at the crack of dawn for her run. Did you see anyone? I asked. Did you see her? I didn't see anyone, Gina said. I just saw the lights. I figured they were up late watching a movie or something. I didn't think much of it. I thanked Gina and hung up. Lights on in the house. At midnight. That meant someone was there. But who if Claire was sick? She'd be in bed. If she was at home, she'd answer the phone. Why wasn't she answering, and where was Mark? I called Claire's other friends. I called her best friend, Sarah. Sarah lives in Albuquerque. She said she hadn't heard from Claire in days. She said she tried calling too, and got nothing. I'm starting to get worried, Sarah said. This isn't like her. She always calls me back. We talk every day. Every day? That's what Sarah said. Claire talked to her every day. My daughter talked to her best friend every single day, but she hadn't called her mother in 3 days. That stung. It stung more than I expected it to. But I pushed the feeling down. It wasn't about me. It was about Claire. Something was wrong. I called Frank at work. I was crying now. I couldn't help it. I'm going to Santa Fe, I said. Beth, Frank said. It's a 4-hour drive. You can't just. I'm going, I said. I don't care how long it takes. Something is wrong. I can feel it. She's my daughter, Frank. I know her. She wouldn't just disappear for 3 days. There was a long silence on the line. Then Frank sighed. Okay, he said. Okay. Be careful. Call me when you get there. Thank you. I said. I hung up the phone. I looked at the clock. It was 6 in the morning. The sun was just starting to come up. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't eat breakfast. I just grabbed my keys, my wallet, and my phone, and I walked out the door. The 4th day was the day I drove to Santa Fe. It was a long drive. 4 hours of open highway, desert on both sides, mountains in the distance. The sun was bright. The sky was blue. It should have been a beautiful day, but I couldn't enjoy it. I just gripped the wheel and stared at the road ahead. My mind was racing. I played out every scenario I could think of. Maybe Claire and Mark had gone on a trip. Maybe they'd had a fight and needed some space. Maybe Claire was just avoiding me. Maybe I was being paranoid, but I knew that wasn't true. I knew it deep in my bones. A mother knows when something is wrong. You just know. It's like a sixth sense. It's the same instinct that makes you wake up in the middle of the night when your baby cries, even if you can't hear them. It's the same instinct that tells you your child is sick even before they show any symptoms. It's a deep, primal thing, and it was screaming at me now. I thought about Claire as a little girl. She was always a good kid. Easy. She never gave me much trouble. She slept through the night by the time she was 3 months old. She learned to walk and talk and read early. She got good grades. She made friends easily. She was always smiling. Always happy. I remembered her first day of kindergarten. She was so excited. She wore her new dress, a little blue one with flowers on it. She hugged me at the door and ran into the classroom without looking back. I stood in the hallway and watched her go. I was proud of her. I was so proud of her. But I also remember the day her father left. She was 7 years old. She didn't cry. She just sat on the couch and stared at the wall. I told her it would be okay. I told her we would be fine. She nodded. She was brave. She was always so brave. After that, it was just the two of us. Me and Claire. We were a team. We built our lives together. I worked 2 jobs to support us. I took her to school, went to her recitals, helped her with her homework. We didn't have much money, but we had each other. We were always okay as long as we had each other. Then she grew up. She went to college. She became a physical therapist. She met Mark. She got married. And slowly, she started to build her own life. One that didn't include me as much as it used to. That's how it's supposed to be. I know that. I don't blame her for it. It's the natural order of things. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being the first person she called. I stopped being the person she came to when she was scared or sad. She started carrying her problems on her own. And I didn't push. I gave her space. I let her be an adult. I should have pushed. I finally reached the city. Santa Fe is beautiful. The adobe houses, the art galleries, the mountains in the background. It's a place that feels like home to me, even though I don't live there. Claire chose a good city to build her life in. I always loved coming to visit her. I turned onto Oakwood Lane. I recognized the street. The trees, the mailboxes, the manicured lawns. Claire's house was halfway down the block. A white 2-story with blue shutters. She picked the paint color herself. She was so proud of it. I pulled up to the curb and stopped the car. I looked at the house. It looked fine from the outside. The windows were dark. The curtains were drawn. The grass was a little overgrown. Mark usually kept it trimmed. He was obsessive about that kind of thing. But it looked like he hadn't mowed in a week or 2. That was odd. It was a small thing, but it was odd. I got out of the car. I felt the sun on my skin. It was hot. The air was still. No breeze. No birds singing. It was quiet. Too quiet. I walked up the front steps. I rang the doorbell. I waited. Nothing. I knocked on the door. I pounded on it. Claire. I yelled. Mark. It's Beth. Open up. I pressed my ear to the wood. I listened. Silence. I walked around the back of the house. The gate to the backyard was unlocked. That was odd too. Claire always kept it locked. She was careful about that kind of thing. She said it was a safety issue. But the gate swung open when I touched it. I stepped into the backyard. The grass was even longer back here. There were weeds growing in the flower beds. Claire loved her garden. She spent hours out here, planting flowers, pulling weeds, talking to her plants. It was her sanctuary. But now it looked neglected. Abandoned. I walked to the back door. A sliding glass door. The blinds were half closed. I peered inside the living room. It was dark. I couldn't see much. But I saw something on the floor. A cushion. A couch cushion. It was on the floor, like it had been knocked off. And something else. A lamp. A lamp on its side. I felt my heart start to race. I tried the handle. The door slid open. It was unlocked. I stepped inside. Chapter 2. The living room was a disaster. I stood in the doorway and stared at the mess. It wasn't just the cushion and the lamp. There was more. A coffee table pushed sideways, scraped against the wall. Magazines scattered across the floor. A broken vase, the pieces of ceramic lying in a pool of dried water. A chair overturned near the window. This wasn't just a messy room. This was a struggle. I felt my legs go weak. I grabbed the door frame to steady myself. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I took a deep breath. I told myself to stay calm. I told myself there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe they had a party. Maybe the dog knocked things over. Claire and Mark didn't have a dog. They didn't have any pets. Claire was allergic to cats and Mark didn't like dogs. Yet there was no reasonable explanation. I walked further into the room. My shoes crunched on the broken ceramic. I looked around. I saw a cup on the floor, shattered. I saw a brown stain on the carpet. It was dried. It was dark. It looked like blood. I felt the air leave my lungs. I couldn't breathe. I stumbled backward, hit the wall, and slid down to the floor. I sat there, staring at the stain. It was blood. I knew it was blood. I've seen blood before. I've cleaned up scraped knees and bloody noses. I know what it looks like when it dries. This was a lot of blood. Claire, I whispered. Claire, where are you? No answer. Just the heavy silence of the house. The air was stale. It smelled wrong. There was a faint, sour smell underneath everything else. It smelled like something had gone bad, like food left out too long. But worse, much worse. I forced myself to stand up. My legs were shaking. I had to find her. I had to find out what happened. I walked through the living room, past the mess, to the bottom of the stairs. The staircase was narrow. The walls were lined with family photos. Claire and Mark at their wedding. Claire and Mark on their honeymoon in Hawaii. Claire and Mark at a Christmas party. All those smiling faces. All those happy memories. They felt like a lie now. Claire. I yelled. Are you up there? Answer me. Silence. Just the sound of my own breathing. I put my foot on the first step. The wood creaked. I climbed slowly, one step at a time. My hand gripped the railing so tight my knuckles turned white. The sour smell got stronger as I went up. It was in my nose, in my throat. It made me want to gag. I reached the top of the stairs. The hallway was dark. The curtains were drawn. I walked down the hall, past the guest room, past the bathroom. The door to the master bedroom was half open. I could see a sliver of the room inside. It was dark in there too. I pushed the door open with my fingertips. It swung inward with a soft creak. I stepped into the bedroom. The room was a wreck. The bed was unmade, the sheets tangled and twisted. The pillows were on the floor. The dresser drawers were pulled open, clothes spilling out. The closet door was open, hangers empty. It looked like someone had packed in a hurry, or like someone had been looking for something. I couldn't tell. I took another step. I couldn't see much in the dark. The curtains were heavy, blocking out the light. I reached for the lamp on the nightstand. My hand was shaking so much I almost knocked it over. I fumbled with the switch. Nothing. The bulb was out. I reached for the other lamp. Same thing. Both dead. I pulled out my phone. I turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the room in harsh white light. I saw the tangled sheets. I saw the clothes on the floor. I saw the open window, the curtains billowing slightly in the breeze. Then I heard it. A sound. A soft, scraping sound. It was coming from under the bed. I froze. My heart stopped. The sound was rhythmic. Back and forth. Scratch. 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 I couldn't move. I was paralyzed. My brain was screaming at me to run, to get out of the house, to call the police. But my body wouldn't obey. I just stood there, shining the flashlight at the bed, listening to that terrible sound. Scratch. 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 I forced myself to move. I took one step forward, then another. I bent down slowly. I lowered the flashlight. The beam of light sliced through the darkness under the bed. I saw a hand. It was a pale hand, reaching out from under the bed frame. The fingers were splayed, scratching at the floorboards. The nails were broken and bloody. The wrist was thin, almost skeletal. I saw a small freckle on the wrist. A freckle I knew. A freckle I had kissed 1,000 times. Claire. I breathed. She didn't answer. She just kept scratching, back and forth, mechanically, like she didn't even know she was doing it. I dropped to my knees. I reached out and grabbed her hand. It was cold. So cold. It felt like ice. Claire. I screamed. Oh my God, Claire. It's me. It's Mom. She didn't grab back. She didn't squeeze my hand. She just kept scratching. Her fingers moved against the wood, scraping off bits of skin, leaving dark streaks of blood. I tried to pull her out. I grabbed her wrist and pulled as hard as I could. She was heavy, unmoving. I couldn't budge her. I could only see her arm and part of her shoulder. The rest of her body was hidden under the bed. I let go of her hand and scrambled to my feet. I ran to the other side of the bed. I dropped to my knees and looked under from the other side. I saw her face. Her eyes were open. They were wide and glassy. She was staring at nothing. Her face was pale, gray-white. Her lips were cracked and blue. There was a wound on her forehead, crusted with dried blood. Her hair was matted, tangled, damp with sweat. Claire. I screamed. Claire, please. Wake up. Please. She didn't move. Her eyes didn't blink. Her chest didn't rise and fall. She was just lying there, on her side, frozen in that terrible pose. One arm stretched out in front of her, her fingers still scratching. She was alive. She had to be alive. She was moving. The scratching. That was movement. That meant she was alive. But I was wrong. I'm an old woman. I've lived long enough to know the difference between life and death. I was in denial. I was clinging to hope. But the truth was staring me in the face, cold and undeniable. Claire was dead. She had been dead for a long time. I didn't want to accept it. I reached for her again. I grabbed her arm. I shook it. I shook her whole body. Get up. I screamed. Get up, Claire. You can't do this to me. You can't leave me. Her head lolled back. Her mouth fell open. A tiny trickle of dark fluid seeped out. I gagged. I let go of her arm and fell backward, scrambling away from the bed that the scratching sound stopped. Claire's arm went limp. It dropped to the floor with a soft thud. I sat on the carpet, my back against the wall. I was crying. I was gasping for air. I couldn't breathe. I was hyperventilating. The room was spinning. The sour smell was everywhere. It was in my mouth, in my nose, in my lungs. I couldn't get away from it. I fumbled for my phone. It was on the floor next to me. I picked it up with shaking hands. I dialed 911. My fingers were clumsy. I hit the wrong numbers twice. The operator answered. 911. What is your emergency? My daughter. I screamed into the phone. She's dead. My daughter is dead. I found her under the bed. Please, you have to send someone. Please. Ma'am, calm down, the operator said. Give me your address. I gave the address. I told her the street name. I told her the house number. I was babbling. I couldn't stop babbling. I kept looking at the bed, at Claire's arm lying still on the floor. The lights were on, I said. The neighbors saw the lights on. She was here the whole time. She was here, and I didn't come. I waited 5 days. 5 days, and she was here the whole time. Ma'am, I need you to take a deep breath, the operator said. Help is on the way. Just stay on the line with me. Tell me what happened. I couldn't answer. I couldn't form the words. I just sat there, staring at the bed, listening to the sirens in the distance that felt like an eternity, but it was probably only a few minutes. Then I heard the sirens get louder. I heard cars screech to a stop outside. I heard doors slamming, footsteps pounding up the stairs. The police burst into the room, officers with guns drawn. They took one look at me and lowered their weapons. One of them knelt in front of me, blocking my view of the bed. Ma'am, are you hurt? He asked. That I shook my head. I couldn't speak. That he helped me stand up. He led me out of the room. I stumbled along behind him, my legs barely working. I saw more officers go into the bedroom. I heard them talking. I heard them radioing for an ambulance. In the hallway, a female officer took me by the shoulders. She was young, maybe 30. She had a kind face. She sat me down on the floor against the wall. She gave me a blanket. I hadn't realized I was shaking. My whole body was trembling. Ma'am, I need to ask you some questions, she said. What's your name? Beth, I said. Beth Turner. Claire is my daughter. Claire is, she's, I couldn't finish the sentence. I started crying again. The officer put her hand on my arm. I'm sorry, Mrs. Turner, she said. I'm so sorry. I looked past her, through the open doorway. I could see the bed. I could see the officers standing around it. I could see them lifting something. A white sheet. They were covering her. I started to scream. I couldn't help it. The sound came out of me like an animal in pain. It was loud and raw and terrible. The officer pulled me close. She held me. She tried to calm me down. But I couldn't stop. My baby was dead. My beautiful, brilliant, kind-hearted baby girl was dead. And I had been too late. That I had waited 5 days. 5 days of calling. 5 days of worrying. 5 days of telling myself everything was fine. And all that time, she was lying under that bed. Alone. In the dark. Suffering. I don't know how long I sat there. Minutes. Hours. I lost track of time. The police came and went. Paramedics came and went. They asked me questions. I answered them. I don't remember what I said. I just remember the look on their faces. Pity. Concern. They were professionals. They handled this kind of thing every day. But for me, it was the worst day of my life. Eventually, a detective came to talk to me. Her name was Riley. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a firm handshake. She had a badge and a gun and a no-nonsense attitude. She sat down next to me on the floor. She didn't try to help me up. She just sat down and started asking questions. Mrs. Turner, I know this is hard, she said. But I need to ask you some things. When was the last time you spoke to your daughter? 5 days ago, I said. She didn't answer. I've been calling for 5 days. I didn't think. I didn't. Who lives here with her? Detective Riley asked. Who else was in the house? Her husband, I said. Mark. Mark Hampton. He lives here. But he's not here. I don't know where he is. I called him too. He didn't answer either. Detective Riley nodded. She wrote something down in a small notebook. Do you know where he might be? Does he have family in the area? Friends? I don't know, I said. I don't know much about his life. He kept to himself. He was always busy with work. We didn't see him much. The detective's face was unreadable. Mrs. Turner, was there any trouble in their marriage, any arguments, any problems? I shook my head. I don't think so. They seemed happy. They always seemed happy. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't entirely true. There had been signs. Little things. Claire seemed tired more often. She seemed less excited when she talked about Mark. She didn't mention him as much when we talked on the phone. I noticed it, but I didn't say anything. I didn't want to pry. I didn't want to be the interfering mother. I should have pried. I should have interfered, that the detective kept asking questions. I kept answering. I told her about the phone calls. I told her about the neighbors seeing the lights on. I told her about the mess in the living room, the struggle, the blood. I told her everything I knew. Finally, she stood up. She looked at me. Her face softened a little. Mrs. Turner, we're going to have to do an autopsy, she said. We need to determine the cause of death. But right now, it looks like there was a violent incident. Your daughter suffered a head injury. She might have been unconscious. It's possible she was left here. Left here, I said. Left here by who? Detective Riley didn't answer. She just looked at me. But I already knew the answer. I knew who left her. Mark. Mark was gone. He had taken his bag and disappeared. The drawers were empty. The closet was bare. He had packed his things and run. And Claire was dead. I started to put it together in my head. The argument. The struggle. The blood. Mark hurt her. He hurt her, and then he left. He left her there to die. Alone. In the dark. The sour smell in the air. The scratches on the floor. She was trying to get out. She was trying to call for help. But no one came. No one heard her. She died of thirst. She died of fear. She died alone and forgotten under her own bed. And I was sitting at home, for hours away, telling myself to calm down. I was worrying, but I wasn't acting. I was scared, but I was too scared to do anything. I waited. I waited 5 days. I should have come on day 1. I should have driven to her house the first time she didn't answer. I should have listened to my gut. I knew something was wrong. I knew it. And I did nothing. I looked at Detective Riley. My voice was steadier now. Anger was starting to replace the shocked. We need to find him, I said. We need to find Mark. The detective nodded. We're working on it, Mrs. Turner. We have officers looking for him. Find him, I said. Find him and make him pay. I stood up. My legs were weak. The detective reached out to help me. I pushed her hand away. I walked past her, down the hallway, toward the stairs. I couldn't stand to be in that house anymore. I couldn't stand to breathe that air. I walked outside, into the bright sunlight. The sky was blue. The birds were singing. The world was still going on, like nothing had happened. But everything had changed. My daughter was dead. And I was going to find the man who killed her. Chapter 3. The first thing I did was call Frank. He picked up on the first ring. Beth, are you okay? What happened? I couldn't get the words out at first. I just stood in the driveway, staring at the house. The yellow tape was going up. Officers were walking in and out. A woman in a white coat was going inside with a medical bag. The coroner. She was going to take my daughter away. Beth, Frank said again. Talk to me. She's dead, Frank, I said. Claire is dead. There was a long silence on the line. Then I heard Frank's voice crack. What happened, Mark? I said. It was Mark. He hurt her. He left her there. She was under the bed, Frank. For 5 days. She was under the bed, and I didn't come. I didn't come for her. Beth, you didn't know? Frank said. You couldn't have known. I should have known, I said. I felt it. I felt something was wrong. Every day I felt it. But I didn't come. I let myself believe it was nothing. Listen to me, Frank said. I'm getting in the car. I'm coming down there. Just stay where you are. Don't move. I'm not going anywhere, I said. I'm going to find him. Beth, don't do anything stupid, Frank said. Let the police handle it. They're not handling it, I said. He's been gone for 5 days. He's probably across the border by now. The police don't even know where to start looking. They don't know him like I do. I hung up the phone. I couldn't talk to Frank anymore. I couldn't listen to him tell me to calm down, to let go, to let the professionals do their job. I had been listening to that voice for 5 days. I had been letting other people tell me how to feel, how to act. I was done with that. I got in my car. I sat in the driver's seat and gripped the steering wheel. I took a deep breath. I needed to think. Where would Mark go? Where would he hide? I thought about his habits. Mark was a creature of routine. He went to the gym every morning, even on weekends. He ate the same thing for lunch every day. He watched the same TV shows at the same time. He was predictable. He was boring. That was why I thought he was a safe, steady husband for my daughter. But I realized now that I didn't really know him. I knew his routines. I knew his job. I knew his favorite pizza topping. But I didn't know his heart. I didn't know what he was capable of. I knew he had an uncle. Uncle Frank. Not my Frank. Another Frank. Frank Hammond. Mark talked about him a few times. He said they used to go camping together. He said his uncle had a cabin. Somewhere in the mountains. I couldn't remember the name of the town, but I remembered something else. I remembered a photograph. A framed picture on Mark's desk. It was a picture of him and his uncle at a lake. A big lake, surrounded by mountains. Mark was holding up a fish, grinning. His uncle was standing next to him, looking proud. I thought about the mountains around Santa Fe, the Sangre de Cristo Range, the Jemez Mountains. There were dozens of lakes up there, dozens of cabins. It would take months to search them all, but I had to start somewhere. I pulled out my phone. I called Gina, the neighbor. She picked up quickly. Beth, oh my God, Beth. I heard the sirens. What happened? Is Claire okay? Claire is dead, Gina, I said. I need to ask you something. You said you saw Mark leave on Tuesday. What time was it? It was early, Gina said. About 6 in the morning. I was getting my newspaper. He had a bag. A big duffel bag. He threw it in the back of his truck and drove off. Did you see which direction he went? I asked. He went south, Gina said. That's the direction he always goes. I remember because I thought it was strange. He usually goes north to work. South. That was something. South meant Albuquerque. South meant the highway. South meant lots of places to go. But it also meant Elephant Butte Lake. He talked about that lake once. He said his uncle took him there as a kid. He said he loved it. I started the car. I pulled away from the curb. I didn't look back at the house. I couldn't. I drove south on the main road, heading for the highway. My hands were steady now. My mind was clear. I had a plan. I drove for an hour. The city gave way to desert. The landscape was flat, dotted with scrub brush and cacti. The sun was high in the sky. It was brutally hot. I didn't care. I kept driving. I stopped at a gas station in a small town. I filled up the tank. I bought a bottle of water and a bag of chips. I didn't feel hungry, but I knew I needed to eat. I couldn't collapse. I couldn't stop. I asked the cashier if he knew the area. He was a young guy, maybe 20. He had a tattoo on his neck and a bored expression. Elephant Butte Lake, I said. Is it far? About another hour, he said. You going fishing? No, I said. I'm looking for someone. He shrugged. Lots of cabins out there. Lots of people. You got a name? Hammond, I said. Frank Hammond. He has a cabin out there. The cashier shook his head. Doesn't ring a bell. But I don't know everyone. You could ask at the marina. They keep records of the cabin owners. I thanked him and got back in the car. I ate the chips while I drove. They were stale. I didn't care. I drank the water. It was warm, but it felt good on my dry throat. I reached Elephant Butte Lake an hour later. The lake was huge, stretching out for miles. The water was blue-green, reflecting the sky. There were boats on the water, people fishing, families having picnics on the shore. It was peaceful. It was beautiful. It was the kind of place where people went to escape their problems. I drove to the marina. It was a small building with a sign out front. A few boats were docked nearby. I went inside. A woman in her 60s was sitting behind a counter. She had gray hair and reading glasses. She was looking at a magazine. Can I help you? She asked. I'm looking for a cabin, I said. It belongs to Frank Hammond. Do you know where it is? The woman looked at me over her glasses. She studied me for a moment. Her expression was cautious. You a friend of Frank's? She asked. Family, I said. I'm looking for his nephew, Mark Hampton. He might be staying there. The woman was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. I know Mark, she said. He's been here before. Comes up every few months. Usually alone. My heart started to race. Has he been here recently? Yesterday, the woman said. He showed up late yesterday. Looked like he'd been driving for a while. Didn't say much. Just asked for the key and went out to the cabin. Which cabin? I asked. Number 12, she said. It's on the north shore. Follow the road around the lake. You'll see the sign. I thanked her and left. I practically ran back to my car. My heart was pounding. He was here. He was actually here. After all this time, after all this searching, I had found him. I drove around the lake. The road was unpaved, rough and dusty. My car bumped along the ruts. I didn't slow down. I didn't care about the car. I just needed to get to the cabin. I saw the signs for the cabins. Number 1, number 2, number 3. I kept driving. Number 6, number 8, number 10. Then I saw number 12. It was a small cabin, painted dark brown. It had a porch with a rocking chair. There was a red Ford truck parked in front. It was Mark's truck. I recognized it. I pulled over to the side of the road. I parked behind a clump of bushes so I wouldn't be seen. I got out of the car and crouched down. I crept through the brush, moving closer to the cabin. My heart was pounding so loud I thought it would give me away. I reached the edge of the clearing. I could see the cabin clearly now. The windows were dark. The curtains were drawn. But I could hear voices inside. 2 voices. A man and a woman. I crept closer. I moved around the side of the cabin. I found a window with a crack in the curtain. I peered inside. Mark was pacing the living room. He looked terrible. His hair was unkempt. He hadn't shaved in days. He was wearing a rumpled shirt, stained with sweat. He looked like a cornered animal. There was a woman sitting on the couch. She was blonde, young, pretty. She was watching him pace. She had a bored, irritated expression. "You said you were leaving her," the woman screamed as she stood up. She was shorter than him, but she was angry. Her face was red. "I did." Mark yelled back. "I did leave her. That's what we're doing here. Isn't it? We're together now." "Not like this," the woman screamed. "You said you were going to handle it. You said you were going to get a divorce. Not this. This is murder, Mark. You killed her." I felt the air leave my lungs. Murder. He said it. He admitted it. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run into the cabin and attack him. But I forced myself to stay still. I forced myself to keep watching. She was ruining everything. Mark yelled. "She was always in my business. Always asking questions. She found out about you. She was going to leave me and take everything. I had to do something." "You had to do something," the woman screamed. "You hit her. You left her there. You didn't even check if she was dead." "She was dead," Mark shouted. "She wasn't moving. She was bleeding everywhere. I thought she was dead." "Obviously she wasn't," the woman yelled. "She was alive, Mark. The police said she was alive for days. She was under the bed, scratching at the floor, and you just ran away." Mark grabbed his head. He pulled at his hair. He was crying now, sobbing like a child. "I didn't know," he said. "I didn't know she was alive. I thought she was dead. I panicked. I just panicked." The woman stared at him. Her face was full of disgust. "You're pathetic," she said. "You know that you're a pathetic, spineless coward. I can't believe I ever loved you." "I love you," Mark said. "That's why I did it. I love you, Tiffany. I did it for us." Tiffany. That was her name. I memorized it. I looked at her face. She looked familiar. I realized I had seen her before. In a photograph. On Mark's desk. The blonde woman in the picture. This was her. I felt a hot rage burning in my chest. I wanted to break the window. I wanted to climb in there and wrap my hands around Mark's throat. I wanted to make him suffer the way Claire suffered, but I didn't move. I stayed hidden. I watched. "I should call the police." Tiffany said. "No." Mark grabbed her arm. "You can't do that. You're an accessory. You helped me. You helped me plan it." "I didn't plan anything," Tiffany shouted. "You told me you were leaving her. That's all. I didn't know you were going to kill her." "It doesn't matter now," Mark said. "We're in this together. You can't turn me in. They'll take you too." Tiffany pulled away from him. She walked to the window. She peered outside. I ducked down. I pressed myself against the wall. My heart was pounding so hard I thought she would hear it. "Someone's out there," she said. Mark walked over to the window. He looked out. I held my breath. I didn't move. "There's no one there," Mark said. "You're paranoid." "I'm not paranoid," Tiffany said. "We can't stay here. We need to go. We need to get out of the country." Mark nodded. Yeah, you're right. We'll go to Mexico. I have money. I have enough to get us started. We can disappear." I heard them moving around the cabin. They were packing. They were going to run again. I had to make a choice. I had to act. Chapter 4. I crept around the back of the cabin. My legs were shaking. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure they could hear it inside. But I kept moving. I had to keep moving. There was a window in the back. It was open a crack. A sliver of cool air escaped into the hot desert afternoon. I pushed it gently with my fingertips. It slid open without a sound. I climbed through the window. I fell into a small kitchen. My hands hit the counter. I caught myself before I fell. I crouched down, hidden behind the counter. I could hear them in the other room. Mark and Tiffany. They were arguing again. Loud voices. Harsh words. "You said you were leaving her." Tiffany screamed. "I did handle it." Mark screamed back. "Not like this," she yelled. "This is murder. You killed her." I saw a phone on the kitchen wall. An old landline. It was white, with a coiled cord. It looked like it hadn't been used in years. I reached for it. My fingers were clumsy. I lifted the receiver. I pressed the buttons. 9-1-1. The operator answered. 911. What is your emergency? I whispered into the phone. I need help. I'm at the cabin. The old cabin at Elephant Butte Lake. My daughter's husband is here. He killed my daughter. He has a gun. Ma'am, stay on the line, the operator said. Just stay on the line. I need you to stay calm. But the door to the kitchen swung open. Mark was standing there. His eyes went wide. He had heard me. He had heard the line click. He had heard me whispering that he lunged for me. He crossed the kitchen in 3 steps. He was fast. Much faster than I expected. He grabbed my arm. He yanked me away from the phone. The receiver swung against the wall. It hit the plaster with a loud crack. You, he screamed. You old witch. How did you find me? He shook me. My head snapped back. I hit the counter. Pain shot through my shoulder. I stumbled. I fell against the refrigerator. I tried to push him away, but he was too strong. He was younger. He was stronger. He pinned me against the refrigerator with his body. Tiffany appeared in the doorway. Her mouth was open. She was frozen. She looked terrified. She was looking at Mark like she didn't recognize him. Mark, let her go, she yelled. Shut up, Tiffany. Mark yelled back. He let go of me for a second. He ran back to the living room. I saw him grab something from the coffee table. A black pistol. He picked it up. He pointed it at me. You ruined everything, he screamed. You and her. Always in my business. Always in my life. His face was twisted. His eyes were wild. He was crying. Tears were streaming down his face. He was insane. He was completely insane. Put the gun down, Mark, I said. The police are coming. You can't get away. He laughed. It was a horrible laugh. Hollow. Empty. I'm not going to prison, he said. I'd rather die. Then do it, I said. But you're going to have to shoot an old woman to do it. He looked at me. He blinked. He didn't expect that. His hand was shaking. The gun was shaking. Put it down, Mark, Tiffany said. Her voice was soft, pleading. Please, just put it down. Shut up. Mark screamed at her. He swung the gun toward her. She flinched. She stepped back. That was my chance. I grabbed the cast iron pan from the stove. It was heavy. It was solid. I swung it with all my strength. I hit him in the wrist. The gun flew out of his hand. It skittered across the floor. I swung again. I hit him in the back of the head. The pan connected with a sickening thud. Mark dropped to his knees. He fell forward. His head hit the floor. He groaned. He didn't get up. I stood over him. I was breathing hard. My whole body was shaking. The pan was still in my hand. I looked at it. It was covered in blood. Mark's blood. Tiffany was screaming. She was backed against the wall. She was crying. She was babbling. I couldn't understand what she was saying. I didn't care. I dropped the pan. I walked to the wall. I picked up the phone. The operator was still on the line. Ma'am. The operator said. Ma'am, are you there? I'm here, I said. He's down. I hit him. He's on the floor. Please hurry. Help is on the way, ma'am, the operator said. Just stay on the line. I stayed on the line. I held the phone to my ear. I didn't move. I just stared at Mark. He was lying on the floor, face down. He was still groaning. He was still alive. I felt a flash of disappointment. I wanted him dead. I wanted him to suffer the way Claire suffered, but I didn't hit him again. I just stood there, waiting. The police arrived in minutes. Sirens. Flashing lights. Officers swarmed the cabin. They pulled me away from Mark. They checked him. He was alive. He was bleeding, but he was alive. They handcuffed him. They handcuffed Tiffany. They took them both outside. They asked me questions. I answered them. I told them everything. The argument. The confession. The gun. The pan. I told them about Claire. I told them about the scratching. I told them about the 5 days. The officers listened. They took notes. They didn't look surprised. They had seen this kind of thing before. They knew how ugly it could be. I sat on the porch of the cabin. The sun was going down. The sky was orange and red. The lake was calm. The birds were singing. It was beautiful. It was peaceful. I couldn't feel any of it. Frank arrived an hour later. He found me on the porch. He ran to me. He held me. He didn't say anything. He just held me. I found him, I said. I found him, Frank. I know, he said. I know you did. He killed her, Frank. He killed her, and he ran. He was going to run away. He was going to go to Mexico. Frank didn't say anything. He just held me tighter. I cried. I cried for Claire. I cried for the life she should have had. I cried for the years I lost, the years I would never get back. The police took Mark to the hospital first. He needed stitches. Then they took him to jail. They took Tiffany too. She was charged as an accessory. She would go to prison too. I didn't feel sorry for her. She knew what he did. She helped him. She was part of it. I stayed at the cabin for a while. I didn't want to leave. I sat on the porch and looked at the lake. I thought about Claire. I thought about her smile. Her laugh. The way she said my name. Mom. She always said it with such warmth. Such love. I would never hear her say it again. Frank stayed with me. He didn't try to make me talk. He didn't try to cheer me up. He just sat next to me. He held my hand. He was a good man. He was a steady man. He had been my rock for 30 years. And he was my rock now that we went home the next day. The drive was long. I slept most of the way. I was exhausted. I hadn't slept in days. I hadn't eaten. I was running on nothing but grief and rage. Now that the rage was gone, there was nothing left. That I slept for 24 hours when we got home. I woke up in the middle of the night. The house was dark. Frank was asleep beside me. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. I listened to Frank's breathing. Steady. Deep. He was peaceful. I wasn't peaceful. I couldn't stop thinking about Claire. I couldn't stop thinking about the scratches. The sound. The smell. The coldness of her hand in mine. I got up. I walked to the kitchen. I made a cup of tea. I sat at the table. I looked at the clock. It was 3 in the morning. I had woken up at 3 in the morning for the past week. It was my new routine. I thought about the trial. It was still months away. Mark would be in prison until then. He would sit in a cell and wait. He would have time to think. Time to regret. I hoped he would feel guilty. I hoped the guilt would eat him alive. But I knew it probably wouldn't. Mark was a coward. Cowards don't feel guilt. They only feel fear. He would be afraid of prison. He would be afraid of the other inmates. He would be afraid of losing his freedom. But he wouldn't be sorry. He wouldn't be sorry for Claire. I went back to bed. I lay down next to Frank. I closed my eyes. I tried to sleep. But I couldn't. I just lay there, staring at the dark, hearing the scratching sound in my head. Scratch. Scratch. Scratched. The days turned into weeks. The weeks turned into months. I went through the motions. I got up. I made breakfast. I watched the news. I went for walks. I talked to Frank. I did all the things I was supposed to do. But I wasn't really there. I was still in that house. Still in that room. Still kneeling on the floor, looking under the bed. Grief is strange. It doesn't follow a timeline. It doesn't get better with time. It just changes. It shifts. It becomes a part of you. A part you learn to carry. I started going to a grief group. It was at the church down the street. I didn't want to go. Frank made me. He said it would help. I didn't think anything could help. But I went anyway. The first meeting was awful. I sat in a circle with other parents. They had lost children too. A man who lost his son to a drunk driver. A woman whose daughter died of cancer. A couple whose baby died of SIDS. They all had stories. They all had pain. They all had the same hollow look in their eyes. I didn't talk at first. I just listened. I listened to their stories. I heard their pain. And I realized I wasn't alone. I wasn't the only one carrying this weight. After a few weeks, I started talking. I told them about Claire. I told them about the scratching. I told them about Mark. I told them about the trial. I told them everything. If they listened. They nodded. They didn't judge. They understood that it helped. It didn't fix anything. It didn't bring Claire back. But it helped. It made the grief a little easier to bear. It made the scratching sound a little quieter. I went back to the house in Santa Fe. The house where Claire died. I had to sort through her things. I had to clean it out. It was the hardest thing I ever had to do. I walked through the rooms. I looked at her clothes. Her books. Her pictures. I held her things. I smelled them. I tried to remember her. I tried to remember the sound of her voice. The warmth of her laugh. I found her diary. It was hidden under her pillow. I opened it. I read the last entry. It was from the day before she died. I can't believe I was so blind. He was never the man I thought he was. I am so scared. I don't know what to do. I wish I could call Mom. I wish she could hold me. I closed the diary. I held it to my chest. I cried. I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. She was scared. She was scared, and she wanted to call me. She wanted to come home. And she didn't. Because she was ashamed. Because she thought she could handle it. Because she didn't want to worry me. I should have called her. I should have called her and told her it was okay. I should have told her she could come home. I should have told her I would always be there for her. I took the diary home. I put it on my nightstand. I read it every night. I read about her dreams, her hopes, her fears. I felt close to her. I felt like she was still with me. The scratching sound never disappeared, but it faded. It became part of the background. A reminder. A lesson. I learned a lot from those 5 days. I learned that life is fragile. I learned that love isn't always enough. I learned that good people can be very naive. And I learned that I have to act. I have to speak up. I have to reach out. Because the worst thing in the world isn't losing someone you love. The worst thing in the world is knowing they suffered alone. And you didn't help them. Chapter 5. The trial started in the fall. I wore my best dress. A navy blue one. Claire bought it for me 3 Christmases ago. She said it made me look elegant. I wore it because I wanted to feel close to her. I wanted her to be there with me. Frank drove me to the courthouse. He held my hand the whole way. The parking lot was full of news vans. Reporters were standing outside with microphones and cameras. They shouted questions at me as I walked up the steps. I didn't answer. I kept my head down and walked inside. The courtroom was cold. The air conditioning was too high. I sat in the front row. Frank sat next to me. Behind me, I could hear the whispers. People talking, speculating. They were here for the show. They wanted to see the murderer. They wanted to see the grieving mother. Mark walked in wearing an orange jumpsuit. His hands were cuffed. His head was shaved. He looked smaller than I remembered, diminished. He wouldn't look at me. He stared at the floor as the guards led him to the defense table. The prosecutor stood up. She was a sharp woman with dark hair and a firm voice. She laid out the case. She told the jury about the 5 days. She told them about the head injury. She told them about the dehydration. She told them about the scratches on the floor. She showed them pictures. The jury looked horrified. I looked at the pictures too. I had seen them before. They didn't get any easier. The defense attorney stood up. He was a thin man with glasses and a nervous twitch. He tried to make excuses. He said Mark was under a lot of stress. He said he wasn't thinking clearly. He said it was an accident. A terrible accident. I wanted to scream. An accident. He hit my daughter with a flashlight. He shoved her under the bed. He left her there to die. That wasn't an accident. That was murder. The witnesses testified. The neighbor Gina. The receptionist at Claire's clinic. The police officers. The coroner. They all told their stories. They all painted the same picture. A man who lost his temper. A woman who paid the price. I was called to the stand. I walked up to the witness box. I sat down. My hands were shaking. I looked at the jury. 12 faces. 12 people who would decide Mark's fate. I tried to see their eyes. I tried to see if they believed me. The prosecutor asked me questions. I told her about the phone calls. I told her about the 5 days of silence. I told her about the fear that grew in my stomach. I told her about the scratching sound. I told her about Claire's hand, cold in mind. I didn't cry. I was past crying. I was just empty. Hollow. A shell of a woman. The defense attorney asked me questions. He tried to make me doubt myself. He tried to make me seem like a hysterical mother. I didn't let him doubt. Mrs. Turner, isn't it true that you and your daughter weren't close? He asked. Isn't it true that you hadn't spoken in weeks before this incident? That's not true, I said. I called her every day. She didn't always answer. But I called. But you didn't go to her house until 5 days later, he said. Isn't that correct? Yes, I said. I waited 5 days. I will regret that for the rest of my life. But that doesn't change what he did. He killed my daughter. He left her there to die. And he ran away. The defense attorney opened his mouth to say something else. But the judge interrupted. The judge told him to sit down. I stepped down from the stand. I walked back to my seat. Frank put his arm around me. I leaned into him. I was so tired that the trial lasted 3 weeks. 3 weeks of testimony. 3 weeks of evidence. 3 weeks of looking at Mark's face, watching him squirm, watching him pretend to be sorry that I didn't believe him. I knew he was only sorry because he got caught. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. For hours of sitting in the hallway, waiting. For hours of staring at the door, willing it to open. For hours of praying that justice would be served. The door opened. The jury filed back in. The judge asked if they had reached a verdict. The foreman stood up. He read the verdict. Guilty. Second-degree murder. Involuntary manslaughter. Guilty on all counts. I let out a breath. The air left my lungs in a rush. Frank squeezed my hand. I heard cheers from the gallery. Someone was crying. I didn't turn around. I just stared at Mark. He was crying. Tears were streaming down his face. He was shaking his head. He looked like a child. A scared, pathetic child. The judge sentenced him. 20 years to life. He would be an old man when he got out. If he ever got out. I stood up. I walked to the front of the courtroom. The bailiff told me to stop. I ignored him. I walked up to Mark. He looked at me. His eyes were red. He opened his mouth to speak. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't bring her back, I said. Sorry doesn't make those scratches on the floor go away. You left her in the dark. You left her to suffer. You are a coward. A guard took him away. I watched him go. I felt nothing. No anger. No relief. Just emptiness. The reporters were waiting outside. They swarmed me. They shoved microphones in my face. They asked me how I felt. They asked me if I was satisfied that I didn't answer. I walked past them. Frank held my arm. We walked to the car. We drove home in silence that I thought I would feel closure. I thought the trial would give me peace. It didn't. It just made the pain more official. It gave it a name. A label. But the pain was still there. It was still heavy. Still crushing up the months past. I went back to the grief group. I talked. I listened. I learned to live with the emptiness. I started going for walks. I walked around the neighborhood. I walked in the park. I walked until my legs ached. I did it to wear myself out. I did it to try to outrun the sound in my head. The scratching sound. It was always there. In the quiet moments. In the night. It was a part of me now. Frank was patient. He didn't push me. He didn't try to fix me. He just stayed with me. He cooked. He cleaned. He held me when I cried. He was a good man. I didn't deserve him. I went back to the cemetery every week. I sat in front of Claire's headstone. I talked to her. I told her about my life. I told her about Frank. I told her about the garden I planted. I put sunflowers on her grave. They were her favorite. She said they looked happy. She said they always turned their faces to the sun. I thought about that. Turning your face to the sun. It was hard. Some days, the grief was a heavy cloud. Some days, I couldn't see the sun at all. But I tried. I tried to be like Claire. I tried to face the world with hope. With optimism. It wasn't easy. It wasn't always possible. But I tried. I learned something through all of this. I learned that grief doesn't go away. It just changes. It becomes a part of you. A part you learn to carry. I learned that love is not enough. Claire loved Mark. She loved him with all her heart. And he killed her. Love didn't save her. I learned that I should have pushed harder. I should have called the police on the second day. I should have driven to her house on the first day. I should have listened to my instincts. I knew something was wrong. I let myself be talked out of it. I will never do that again. I call my friends now. Every day, I call my neighbors. I check on them. If they don't answer, I knock on their door. I will never wait 5 days again. I will never let someone I love suffer alone in the dark. Mark writes me letters from prison. I throw them away. I don't want his apologies. I don't want his excuses. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't bring Claire back. It doesn't erase the sound that the scratches are still there. I had the house cleaned. I had the carpet replaced. But the scratches are still there. They're carved into the wood. They're a part of the house now. A part of my memory. I think about Claire. I think about her laughter. I think about her smile. I think about the way she made everyone around her feel loved. She was a good person. She was kind. She was caring. She didn't deserve what happened. No one deserves that. I still sit in the garden. I watch the sunflowers turn their faces to the light. I try to do the same. Some days I can. Some days I can't. But I tried because that's what Claire would want. She would want me to live. She would want me to find joy. She would want me to keep going. And I do. I keep going. For her. For Frank. For myself. The scratching sound is my reminder. It's a terrible reminder. A painful one. But it's a true one. It reminds me that life is fragile. It reminds me that love is precious. It reminds me that I have to act. I have to speak up. I have to reach out. Because you never know. You never know when 5 days of silence will turn into forever. I look at the sunflowers. I think about Claire. I think about the girl who loved them. The girl who wanted to be happy. The girl who faced the sun. I take a deep breath. I stand up. I walk back inside. I have a life to live. I have people to check on. I have phone calls to make. I won't wait 5 days again. I won't let silence go unanswered. I won't let anyone I love suffer alone in the dark. That's my promise. A mother's promise. And I plan to keep it. So if you're listening, if you're watching, if you have someone you love, don't wait. Call them. Check on them. Knock on their door. Don't let 5 days become forever. Because the scratching under the bed isn't just a sound. It's a scream. It's a cry for help. It's a warning. And you have to answer it. Before it's too late. Subscribe to our channel. Share this story. Tell us in the comments if you've ever had a gut feeling you ignored. We want to hear your story. And remember, listen to the scratching. Answer the call. Don't let 5 days steal everything you love. Chapter 6. 2 years passed. Time doesn't heal everything. That's a lie people tell themselves. Time just makes the edges less sharp. It doesn't fill the hole. It doesn't bring back the person you lost. It just teaches you how to walk around the hole without falling in. I learned to walk. Frank and I moved to a smaller house. The old one was too big. Too many empty rooms. Too many memories. We sold it to a young couple with 2 children. I watched them move in. I watched them paint the walls and plant flowers in the yard. I was happy for them. They were starting their lives. They had no idea how fragile it all was. Our new house was a ranch-style bungalow. 1 floor. No stairs. We had a small backyard with a patch of grass and a single tree. I planted sunflowers along the fence. They grew tall and bright. They turned their faces to the sun. Claire would have loved them. I still went to the grief group. Every Tuesday night. The faces changed over time. Some people stopped coming. They found other ways to cope. New people came. New parents with new grief. I listened to their stories. I shared my own. I tried to help them. It helped me too. One woman joined the group 6 months ago. Her name was Margaret. She was in her 60s. Her son died in a car accident. A drunk driver. He was 24. She showed me a picture of him. He was handsome. He looked like he was always laughing. We started talking outside the group. We went for coffee. We went for walks. We sat in my garden and watched the sunflowers sway in the breeze. Margaret understood. She didn't try to fix me. She just listened. We were 2 broken women trying to put ourselves back together. Frank was happy I had a friend. He said I smiled more. He said I laughed sometimes. He was right. The grief was still there. The hole was still there. But I was learning to live around it. I still thought about Claire every day. I still woke up at 3 in the morning. I still stared at the ceiling and heard the scratching sound. But it was quieter now. It was a whisper instead of a scream. I went to the cemetery less often. Not because I loved her less, but because I knew she wasn't there. She was in my heart. She was in the sunflowers. She was in the memories. Sometimes I would be doing something ordinary. Washing dishes. Reading a book. Watering the plants. And I would remember something. The way she laughed. The way she said my name. The way she hugged me at the airport when she came home for Christmas. Those moments would hit me like a wave. They would knock the air out of my lungs. I would have to sit down. I would have to close my eyes and breathe through it. But the waves came less frequently now. And they were smaller. They didn't knock me over as often. I started writing. I wrote down everything. The phone calls. The drive. The house. The scratching. The trial. I wrote it all down. I filled 3 notebooks with my handwriting. It was my way of processing. My way of making sense of it. I thought about publishing it. Maybe as a book. Or an article. Something to help other people. Something to warn them. To tell them to act. To tell them not to wait. But I wasn't ready yet. The wound was still too fresh. The words were still too raw. 2 years. And Mark was still in prison. I didn't go to visit him. I didn't write to him. I didn't want to see his face. I didn't want to hear his voice. I had nothing to say to him. He was a ghost. A shadow. A reminder of the worst thing that had ever happened to me. But he still wrote to me. Every month. A letter. I threw them all away. I didn't read them. I didn't want to know what he had to say. It didn't matter. His words were meaningless. He was a coward. He would say anything to make himself feel better. Frank told me I should read one. He said it might give me closure. But I didn't want closure. Closure was a myth. It didn't exist. There was no ending to grief. There was only learning to carry it. Margaret and I went to the lake one summer. Elephant Butte Lake. I hadn't been back since that day. The day I found Mark. The day I hit him with the cast iron pan. Margaret didn't know the whole story. She knew Claire died. She knew Mark killed her. She didn't know about the scratching. She didn't know about the 5 days. I hadn't told her yet. We drove out to the lake. It was a beautiful day. Blue sky. Warm sun. The water was calm. People were fishing. Boats were gliding across the surface. Families were having picnics. Children were laughing. I walked along the shore. I remembered the cabin. The porch. The rocking chair. The red truck. I remembered the fear. The anger. The rage. But I didn't feel those things anymore. I just felt tired. A deep, bone-weary tiredness. There's something I haven't told you. I said to Margaret. What is it? She asked. I told her about the scratching. I told her about the 5 days. I told her about Claire's hand. Cold and still. I told her about the broken nails and the bloody fingers. I told her about the sound. The sound that would never leave me. Margaret listened. She didn't interrupt. She didn't ask questions. She just listened. When I was done, she took my hand. You did everything you could. She said. No. I said. I waited. I should have gone sooner. You didn't know? She said. You couldn't have known. I should have known, I said. I felt it. I felt something was wrong. But I let myself be talked out of it. I let myself believe it was nothing. You were trying to be a good mother, Margaret said. You were trying to give her space. You were trying to respect her independence. That's what good mothers do. I shook my head. A good mother would have been there. A good mother would have knocked on her door. A good mother wouldn't have waited 5 days. Margaret squeezed my hand. You can't blame yourself for this. He did this. Mark did this. Not you. I didn't say anything. I knew she was right. But knowing it and feeling it were two different things. That we sat by the lake for a long time. We watched the sun go down. The sky turned orange and red. The water reflected the colors. It was peaceful. It was beautiful. I thought about Claire. I thought about her life, her dreams, her hopes. I thought about all the things she would never do, the children she would never have, the happiness she would never feel. That it made me sad. It made me angry. It made me tired. But it also made me grateful. Grateful that I had her for 32 years. Grateful that I got to be her mother. Grateful for every laugh, every hug, every moment that I started to cry. Margaret put her arm around me. She held me while I cried. I miss her so much, I said. I know, Margaret said. I know. We stayed until the stars came out. Then we drove home. I fell asleep in the passenger seat. I dreamed of Claire. She was laughing. She was running through a field of sunflowers. I called out to her. She turned around. She waved at me. She smiled. Then she disappeared. I woke up as we pulled into my driveway. Frank was waiting on the porch. He helped me out of the car. He held me close. Did you have a good day? He asked. Yes, I said. I think I did. I went inside. I walked to my bedroom. I looked at the diary on my nightstand. Claire's diary. I had read it 100 times. I knew every word, every sentence, every hope and fear. I picked it up. I held it to my chest. I whispered to her, I'm sorry, Claire. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry I didn't come sooner. I would have. If I had known, I would have come. I put the diary down. I looked out the window. The moon was full. The stars were bright. It was a beautiful night. I thought about the future. I didn't know what it held. I didn't know if I would ever find peace. I didn't know if the scratching sound would ever go away. But I knew one thing. I knew I wouldn't give up. I knew I would keep fighting. I knew I would keep living. For Claire. For Frank. For myself. I got into bed. Frank came in a few minutes later. He lay down next to me. He wrapped his arm around me. I closed my eyes. The scratching sound was there. It was always there. But it was quieter now. Softer. It was a whisper. A reminder. I fell asleep. I didn't dream. The next day, I woke up early. The sun was rising. The sky was pink and orange. I got out of bed. I walked to the window. I looked at my garden. The sunflowers were turning their faces to the sun. I smiled. A real smile. For the first time in a long time. I went to the kitchen. I made coffee. I sat at the table. I took out my notebook. I started writing. I wrote about the future. About hope. About moving forward. I wrote about Claire. About everything she taught me. About everything I wanted to remember. I wrote about the scratching. I wrote about the sound. I wrote about how it had changed me. How it had made me stronger. I wrote about love. And loss. And the space between them. When I was done, I put down the pen. I looked at the words. They were mine. They were honest. They were real. I decided to share them. I decided to tell the world what happened. Not for revenge. Not for closure. But to help someone. To warn someone. To make sure no one else made the same mistake. I would write a book. I would write a story. I would write the truth. Because the truth matters. The truth can save lives. And I wanted to save lives. I wanted to make sure no one else heard the scratching sound. I wanted to make sure no one else waited 5 days. I took a sip of my coffee. I looked out the window at the sunflowers. I thought about Claire. I love you. I whispered that, and I knew she heard me. I knew she was with me. In the sunflowers. In the garden. In my heart. I wasn't alone. I would never be alone. Because love doesn't end. It doesn't disappear. It changes. It shifts. It becomes a part of you. A part you carry with you forever. I carried Claire with me. Every day. Every night. And I would keep carrying her. Until the end of my days. Because that's what mothers do. They carry their children. Always. Forever. No matter what. Chapter 7. I wrote the book in 6 months. It wasn't easy. Some days, the words wouldn't come. I would sit at my desk for hours, staring at a blank page, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. Other days, the words came too fast. They spilled out of me in a rush, painful and raw. I wrote until my hand cramped. I wrote until my eyes burned. Frank was my biggest supporter. He made me tea. He brought me sandwiches. He didn't interrupt me when I was writing. He just quietly left the food on the corner of my desk and slipped out of the room. He knew I needed space. He knew I needed to do this on my own. Margaret read the first draft. She sat in my kitchen for an entire afternoon, turning the pages slowly, her face unreadable. When she finished, she looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "This is going to help people," she said. "This is going to save lives." I hope she was right that the book was published in the spring. A small independent press picked it up. They didn't give me a big advance. They didn't promise me fame or fortune. They just said the story needed to be told. That was enough for me. I called it The Scratch Under the Bed. It was a simple title, a stark one, but it was honest. It was exactly what the story was about. I went on a small book tour. Not a big one, just a few local bookstores, a couple of libraries. I stood at podiums in front of small crowds and told my story. I talked about Claire. I talked about the 5 days. I talked about the scratching. People cried. I cried too. It was exhausting, but it was also healing. Every time I told the story, I felt a little lighter. Every time I saw the understanding in someone's eyes, I felt a little less alone. One night, after a reading at a library in Albuquerque, a woman came up to me. She was in her 50s, with gray hair and tired eyes. She was holding a copy of my book. Her hands were shaking. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for writing this." I smiled. "Thank you for reading it." She hesitated. Her eyes darted to the side. She seemed nervous. "I have to tell you something," she said. "Something that happened to me." I motioned to a chair. "Please, sit down." She sat down across from me. She clutched the book to her chest. She took a deep breath. 3 years ago," she said, "my sister stopped answering my calls. Just like you. She was my only family. My parents were gone. I had no one else." My heart started to race. "What happened?" "I waited," she said. "I waited a week. I told myself she was busy. I told myself she needed space. I told myself I was being paranoid. I already knew where this was going. I wanted to tell her to stop. I wanted to tell her I couldn't hear it. But I didn't. I just listened. I went to her house after a week." The woman continued. "She was on the floor in her kitchen. She had fallen down the stairs. She was there for 3 days. 3 days, and I didn't come." "Was she?" I started. "She was alive," the woman said. "Barely. She had a broken leg. She couldn't get up. She couldn't reach the phone. She just lay there on the floor, crying for help. No one hurt her." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Is she okay now?" "She's alive," the woman said. "She has a limp. She still has nightmares. But she's alive. She survived." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "I could have lost her," the woman said. "I could have waited another day, another week, and she would have died. Alone. In that kitchen. All because I was too afraid to be the annoying sister." The woman looked at me. Her eyes were wet. "Your book made me realize," she said. "I read your book, and I realized I wasn't the only one. I wasn't the only person who made that mistake. And I decided to forgive myself." I reached out and took her hand. "You should forgive yourself," I said. "You did go. You saved her." "I was lucky," she said. "I could have been you." I nodded. I didn't have the words to respond. We sat in silence for a long moment. Then she squeezed my hand. She stood up. She smiled at me. "Thank you," she said again, "for telling your story, for helping people like me." She walked away. I watched her go. I sat in that chair for a long time, staring at the empty space where she had been. I thought about the two of us. 2 women. 2 sisters. One lost, one saved. The thin line between tragedy and survival. How easily it could have gone the other way. I went home that night, and I called Frank. I called Margaret. I called everyone I loved. I just wanted to hear their voices. I knew I wasn't responsible for what happened to Claire. I knew that now, but I also knew I could have done more. I could have acted sooner. I could have listened to my gut. I could have saved her. And that knowledge would always be with me. It would always be a part of me. But I also knew something else. I knew I couldn't let that knowledge destroy me. I couldn't let it consume me. I had to use it. I had to turn it into something good, if that's what the book was. That's what the book tour was. I was taking my pain and turning it into purpose. I went to visit Claire's grave the next day. It was a sunny afternoon. The sky was blue. The birds were singing. I knelt down in front of her headstone. I touched the cold marble. I traced her name with my fingers. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm sorry I didn't come sooner. I'm sorry I didn't save you. I'm sorry I let you suffer alone. The wind blew. The grass swayed. But I'm not going to let it happen to anyone else, I said. I'm going to tell your story. I'm going to tell the world. I'm going to make sure people listen. I'm going to make sure people act. I stayed there for a long time. I talked to her. I told her about the book. I told her about the woman at the library. I told her about Margaret and Frank. I told her about my garden and the sunflowers. I told her I loved her. When I stood up to leave, I felt something. A warmth. A peace. It was like she was telling me it was okay. It was like she was telling me she understood. I walked back to my car. I sat in the driver's seat and looked at the cemetery. It wasn't a sad place anymore. It was a peaceful place. A place of rest. I started driving home. I put the window down. I let the wind blow through my hair. I turned on the radio. Music was playing. A song Claire used to love. She used to sing it in the car when she was a teenager. Loud and off-key. I laughed. I laughed out loud. I laughed until I cried. And I kept driving. I kept living. I kept moving forward. Because that's what Claire would have wanted. She would have wanted me to be happy. She would have wanted me to live my life. She would have wanted me to smile. And I was trying. Every day, I was trying. I got home. Frank was on the porch. He was reading a book. He looked up when I walked up the steps. How was the cemetery? He asked. Good, I said. It was good. He nodded. He didn't ask for more. He just opened his arms. I walked into them. He held me close. I love you, he said. I love you too. I said that. We stood on the porch for a long time. The sun was setting. The sky was orange and red and purple. The sunflowers in my garden were turning their faces to the west, following the light. I thought about the future. I thought about what was next. There was always a next. Life kept going. It kept moving. And you had to move with it. I didn't know what my next step would be. Another book, more speaking events, I didn't know. But I was open to it. I was open to the possibilities. Because I had learned something. Something important. I had learned that the worst thing you can do is stop living. You have to keep going. You have to keep fighting. You have to turn your face to the sun. Even when it's hard. Even when you don't want to. You have to do it. Because that's how you survive. That's how you honor the people you've lost. That's what I was doing. I was surviving. I was honoring Claire. And I would keep doing it. For the rest of my life. I went inside. I made dinner. I ate with Frank. We watched TV. We went to bed. Simple things. Ordinary things. But they meant everything. I fell asleep that night with a smile on my face. The scratching sound was still there. It was always there. But it was fainter now. Softer. It was a distant echo. And in its place, I heard something else. A voice. Claire's voice. Laughing. Singing. Telling me she loved me. I held onto that voice. I carried it with me into my dreams. And I knew, for the first time in a long time, that I was going to be okay. Not perfect. Not healed. Not over it. But okay. And okay was enough. Because okay is a start. Okay is a beginning. Okay is a choice. And I chose okay. I chose living. I chose hope. For Claire. For Frank. For myself. And I would keep choosing it. Every single day. It's been 3 years now. 3 years since I heard the scratching. 3 years since I held Claire's cold hand. 3 years since my world shattered into a million pieces. I still think about her every day. I still miss her with every breath. But the grief has changed. It's softer now. It's a companion, not a weight. It walks beside me instead of crushing me. I still wake up at 3 in the morning sometimes. I still lie in the dark and listen. But the scratching is barely audible now. It's a whisper. A memory. A reminder of what I almost lost, what I did lose, and what I refused to lose again. Margaret and I still meet for coffee. We still walk in the park. We still talk about our children, our losses, our lives. We are two women who understand each other in a way no one else can. We are survivors. Frank is still my rock. He still holds me when I cry. He still makes me laugh when I need it most. He still loves me, even when I'm difficult, even when I'm broken. He is the reason I get up in the morning. He is the reason I keep going. The sunflowers are still growing in my garden. They turn their faces to the sun every day. I do the same. Some days it's easy. Some days it's hard. But I do it. I choose to turn toward the light. I still visit the cemetery every week. I talk to Claire. I tell her about my life. I tell her about Frank. I tell her about Margaret. I tell her about the book and the people it's helped. I tell her I love her. I always tell her I love her. I look at her headstone. I read her name. Claire Elizabeth Turner. Beloved daughter. Always in our hearts. I kneel down. I touch the cold marble. I close my eyes. Claire, I say, I promise you this. I will never let 5 days of silence go unanswered. I will never let someone I love suffer alone in the dark. I will always listen. I will always act. I will always show up. I stand up. I look at the sky. It's blue, clear, endless. That I take a deep breath. I turn around. I walk back to my car. That I have a life to live. I have people to check on. I have love to give. And I'm ready. The scratching under the bed taught me something. It taught me that silence is not peace. It's a warning. It's a cry for help. It's a chance to act before it's too late. Don't wait. Call your loved ones. Show up at their door. Listen to the silences. Notice the signs. Trust your gut. Because the worst thing in the world isn't losing someone you love. It's knowing they suffered alone while you waited. Subscribe to our channel. Share this story. Leave a comment below. Tell us about a time you knew something was wrong and you acted. Or a time you wish you had. Because your story matters. Your voice matters. Your actions matter. Don't wait 5 days. Answer the scratching before it's too late. And remember, you can't change what happened, but you can change what happens next.